Greetings, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another week in what I'm calling Mindful March. And this week, the march is on. The sun moves into Aries, and Sensei says, your inner brat may come out. From my smartphone to yours, keep streaming for your weekly Namaste Today. Welcome to Namaste Today, a spiritual way to kickstart the day. I'm your host and spiritual life coach, Sensei Christopher Witecki. Welcome back, dear friend. Namaste. Well, we are on to our mindful march, and this week we are marching into our ego consciousness. We just spent 30 days focusing on clearing our lower vibration karma and ascending our spiritual story to the highest dimension possible. This week, we pick up with the old ego and begin the process of decommissioning the old ego in order to make way for a new ego that will support our higher spiritual goals. So in this week's show, I'm going to talk about how this week is about identifying that old antiquated ego. And then at the end of the week, we start a 3-week Mercury retrograde. So in our tea time, I'm going to talk about what the Mercury retrograde means for all 12 signs. But first, let's take a look at the week's moods and your zodiac weather. This zodiac weather is from Monday, March 19th to Friday, March 23rd, 2018. Looking at your 5-day moodcast. When I look at the week at a glance, you'll notice there's only 2 sunny days, Wednesday and Friday. Let's drill down. On Monday, it's overcast, cloudy, and rather tested. Step 29, Pisces rules the day, and a moon in Aries doesn't make things easier. On Tuesday, it's overcast, cloudy, and intuitive. Step 0, Aries rules the day, and a moon in Taurus manifests your mood. On Wednesday, it's sunny and manifesting, one of the greatest days of the week. Love Step 1 rules the day, and a moon in Taurus manifested into reality. But on Thursday, it's cloudy, overcast, and irritable. A moon in Gemini triggers the mind, and Step 2 triggers the emotion. Then on Friday, it's sunny and learning as Step 3 rules the day, and a moon in Gemini brings some clarity. Well, looking at the weekend ahead, it really is all about rooting out the old ego. In our next segment, I'm going to walk you through each day and talk about the rooting. Taking a sneak peek at the upcoming week, I coined this week, Revealing the Old Ego. Now, we just spent 30 days focusing on our inner spirit and our spiritual karma. And in this particular year of 2018, I believe we made a concrete split between the karma we were born to and the story we were born to live. And the reason why I believe this is due to the planets of Neptune and Chiron. Neptune was floating around step 13 and 14 during the transit. Chiron was floating between step 27 and 28. And these are key steps to actual change, which told me that this year with the sun in Pisces, we were in fact going to make a split between the old karma and the new destiny. All of this work was pretty heavy, I think, because we had a lot of old spiritual kind of dragons coming up in our face and boogeymen kind of spooking us. And through the whole transit, what we did was climb higher and higher, which really all apexed last weekend when we had the powerful new moon in Pisces, followed by Love Fest Day on Sunday. This week, we now move into the sun in Aries, which is the consciousness of our ego. Your ego consciousness is the part of your soul that is responsible for your physical survival. And I have to underscore physical survival, okay? Because spiritual survival is inevitable. Everyone, in my opinion, is going to continue to live on after this life. Just my opinion. But ego is tied to physical, which is tied to objects, which is tied to the outside reality. And because ego is tied to the outside reality, every now and then the ego has to be completely broken down and rebuilt. Why is that? Because the egos we currently have kind of in motion are tied to the outside reality that was tied to the old karma. Now that we have changed our own inner essence and we have raised our vibration, we're going to find inside of ourselves a conflict between our spiritual intention and our actual behavior. That's part of what ego is in charge of, is behavior, action energy, and the identity consciousness, the part of us that feels that we have an I, capital I, in our life. So this week is going to be, I think, a little challenging. The reason is your spiritual intentions have gone up, but your ego has remained the same. Your behavior, your defenses, your identity, your character, it's still all tied to the old karma that we turned our back to in the last Pisces transit. So I believe this week is going to be about rooting out that old ego, kind of identifying it, which means that it's probably going to have to misfire. It's probably going to have to have us hit a wall in some cases. Is probably going to force us to say things we don't mean. In other words, we might be a jackass this week, okay, in order to determine the jackass that needs to be decommissioned. Now, there's a couple of planets that are really also making waves this week that I think are important. One is that Mars, the planet of ego, has moved into Capricorn. While we were in Pisces, Mars was in Sagittarius. So our ego is very focused on the story we were born to live, our collective conscious, our karmic story, our Akashic record. These are all Sagittarius sort of vibrations. Now that Mars has moved into Capricorn, our ego is focused now on power, control, authority, decisions. And Mars is in what we call an orb to Saturn, which means that we're feeling the pressure to stand up, to take responsibility. And because Mars is in Capricorn, we're also feeling kind of restless and impatient. That's one of the weird things about Mars and Capricorn. Capricorn rules time, Mars rules impatience. So when you have impatience in the consciousness of time, okay, you become super impatient. So this is kind of almost like God setting us up to fail in a good way. We want to fail because we want to expose the old ego. We want to root out the old ego. But this week, as we're trying to root it out, we have this vibration of being very, very impatient, and not just impatient, but impatient about our control issues. All right, so to me, this is a ticking time bomb that's designed by the universe to basically expose the old ego, to expose the old defense mechanisms, basically to expose all of your weaponry from your old karmic Cold War. The other interesting aspect of this week is that Mercury on Friday will go retrograde, which tells me whenever Mercury goes retrograde that it means something profound has been discovered in ourselves. That's one of the things I've noticed over the last 20 plus years that I've been doing this on camera. Something profound actually is going to come to be, and that forces us then to rethink what that is. To me, whatever that profound realization is likely that we identify the old ego. We identify the old Cold War weaponry system, and once we identify it and realize it's antiquated, it's for the old karmic system, we're going to need 3 weeks of Mercury retrograde to rethink how to rebuild this ego. Another interesting part of this week is that Jupiter is retrograde in Scorpio. It begins at step 23, and then at around Friday it moves to step 22. Now, having Jupiter in retrograde means that the universe is no longer teaching us, that's Jupiter direct, teaching us about boundaries, Scorpio. And this means that we will be tested on our boundaries as Jupiter retrogrades. So Jupiter was moving direct for 6 solid months, started around, I think, October, and it is now retrograded. And this means that between now and July, when it goes direct again, we will be tested on our personal boundaries. Now, the reason why this is important is because we are trying to root out the old ego. So I would not be surprised if that old ego crosses boundaries. I would not be surprised if someone else's old ego trespasses against your personal space or boundaries. And so we're kind of set up for a week of a lot of people stepping on each other's feet and speaking out loud and saying things that they don't really mean. Just saying, that's a possibility. And then another interesting planet of the week is Pluto. As of Monday, Pluto moves to step 21 Capricorn, when it starts to get fun. And what's interesting about that is Pluto basically is like a bulldozer of consciousness. It kind of bulldozes old control issues, old consciousness, making room for new construction. Now, step 21 Capricorn is the highest that Pluto is going to go in this year, 2018. It retrogrades and never gets back to step 21 this year. It won't actually reach step 21 again until 2019. But what's interesting is step 21 is when you begin to move into the master realm of consciousness, all right? And in this case, the master realm of control. So as we have Mars approaching Saturn, we're actually being pinched to let go of the amateur parts of our control. And with Pluto moving to step 21, we're actually trailblazing the potential for master control. All of this while we're trying to root out the old ego. And then lastly, Uranus. Uranus has been in step 26, I don't know, I don't have the research in front of me, but it seems like forever. Okay, and Uranus this week moves to the Grandmaster step of step 27 Aries. This is not just a step number of Aries, it's the Grandmaster. That's because it's 2 plus 7 makes 9, which is the number of Aries. What this means, Uranus is the innovation energy. And so it's interesting that we have Pluto moving into the master consciousness of control. We have Uranus moving to step 27, the Grandmaster step of Aries. And so what you can end up having in a conscious realm is the bottom part of our ego and our control issues are being torn down, and the top part of our ego and our control issues are being built up. So as you can hear, this is going to be a bit of a tumultuous week. Okay, I don't mean tumultuous as in a lot of outer hell. I think it'll all be inner. I don't think a lot of people will be acting out. Certainly people in your life, certainly people in your sphere of influence. But I do think that we're going to find ourselves speaking out, biting our lip, regretting what we said, then unshaming ourselves. It's going to feel like we're kind of in a straitjacket. And then after that ends, Mercury goes retrograde and we find our intellect kind of flipping inside out. So I want to walk you real quick through the week and just talk about how this is going to unfold step by step. And keep in mind, what this week's objective is really is to reveal the old ego. The old karmic Cold War weaponry system, the old way of defending yourself, the old way of sticking up, the old way of fighting, the old way of responding, all of the behavior that is attached to your pain and misery and karma needs to be identified so it can be decommissioned. Now on Monday, it's kind of a hybrid day. I had said Monday is cloudy and tested. We're actually at step 29 Pisces on Monday, but Mercury and Venus are conjoining in Aries, and the moon crosses Uranus. So Monday's weird. It's a test of your faith, and it's also the first day that your ego may make major mistakes. It's also the first day that Pluto moves to step 21 Capricorn. So Monday has a lot of spiritual gravity going on. The best thing to do is just keep the faith. And I always say, get yourself some popcorn and watch the show. Don't judge yourself, because what you're trying to do is identify the old ego, not condemn it, not punish it, not feel bad. In fact, all those things are probably old ego behaviors, right? So Monday, I'm expecting things to kind of feel kind of batty, and you're going to find that you have to emotionally grow up and mature about something as the moon crosses Uranus. Tuesday, it's cloudy, overcast, and intuitive. Step 0 rules the day. We now move into the official Aries consciousness on this day. But it's also a very spiritual day because Mercury and Venus conjoin directly at step 16 Aries. So I'm predicting that you'll have some revelation, some understanding, some clarity about your spiritual story. You'll probably have some hints from the universe as to which parts of your behavior need to end now, which parts need to be decommissioned. I'm not saying you're going to pay attention to that, but I'm saying you probably will begin to realize what needs to go. It won't be from making mistakes, though. It'll be from understanding. And the moon is in Taurus, so the conscious camera is recording now. Anytime the moon's in Taurus, we are manifesting. So be very careful about your behavior, especially to yourself. On Wednesday, it's sunny and manifesting. This is probably the most positive day of the week. This is probably the most productive day of the week on Wednesday. That's because step 1 rules the day, so our heart is out and about. But I do think that some people might get confused between what their heart is telling them and what their ego loves. All right, and I talked about this in my personal Sensei service very deep, but basically our ego loves power, but that doesn't necessarily mean our heart is behind that. So Wednesday's kind of a tricky day. Your heart is out and about, but you might be confused between ego love and heartfelt love. And the other thing that's happening Wednesday is the moon opposes Jupiter retrograde at step 23 step 23 Scorpio with the moon in Taurus. And what that means is Wednesday's also a day, even though it's sunny and loving, a day where you may accidentally cross boundaries or someone may cross your boundaries. So Wednesday is a little bit of the devil in disguise because it will feel sunny and the rainbow will be out, but people will be screwing up left and right. Thursday is cloudy and super irritable. In fact, Thursday probably has a chance of thunderstorms, to be honest. That's because step 2 rules the day, which is emotion, and we're in the sign of Aries, which is ego. So when ego and emotion get together, it's like electricity and water. Something is going to be shocked because our emotions flare up, our ego responds, that makes us more emotional, that makes us respond again. So it can kind of turn into a spiral. I would avoid all conflicts and anything that could cause trouble on Thursday, because I think we're going to be internally kind of a little bitchy, just to say that. Mars is also at step 2, which adds to it. And then on Friday, it's sunny and learning. Step 3 rules the day. And the thing about Friday is, boy, does it feel different for a lot of reasons. For one, Friday's when Mercury goes retrograde, which is at step 16, by the way. Venus moves to step 20, which means suddenly our ego gets very passionate. Uranus moves to step 27, as I mentioned, so suddenly on Friday, we're being called to stand tall. And Jupiter retrogrades back to step 22, Scorpio, which is a transdimensional, unstable step, which means at that point, boundaries get really loosey-goosey as of Friday. So I don't think anything bad is going to happen on Friday per se, but I do think that things are going to feel really strange, really out of this world, and really awkward. And we likely will, by Friday, have identified the part of our ego, or at least the first chunk of our ego, that we need to sort of decommission. Now, real quickly, I'll say Saturday will be breakdown with showers, so this is going to be a tough weekend. And Sunday is going to be cloudy and moody. All right, so this is all part of the identifying of our ego. Now, with all that said, we are beginning a Mercury retrograde transit here that's going to last for 3 weeks on Friday. So go steep yourself some tea, and let's have our weekly tea time. Hello, my friend, and welcome to our tea time. Today's tea time topic is rethinking the ego. And that's how I summarize the Mercury retrograde over the next 3 weeks. It again begins on Friday. In fact, the Mercury retrograde runs from March 23rd all the way till April 15th, which I think is the deadline for taxes, strangely enough, too. So you might want to get your taxes done before Friday. Otherwise, you might find yourself not getting figures correctly. But in this particular Mercury retrograde, Mercury begins at step 16 Aries, and she moves backward all the way to step 4 Aries, which is amazing. Now, step 16 is our spiritual aspects of our ego. 16 nets to a 7. So that means we start with a spiritual intention to change the ego, and that's on Friday, the 23rd of March. And then Mercury retrogrades all the way back to step 4 of Aries, which means that our mind gets to a place where we realize we belong on a different level of thinking. And since Mercury is in Aries, it means that we belong on a different level of our ego approach to the situation, how our ego approaches it. Now, as I mentioned in the last segment, our ego, the one that's currently in play, is all based on our fight or flight survival consciousness. So our ego approach for most of us has been defensive. It has been that we're the underdog. We are the less than. We are not strong enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not enough. Okay, so kind of like, or we are abandoned, or we have no hope, or we get no help. You get the picture of what I'm talking about. Most people come at every activity, come at every response to another person, come at every action or response to themselves from this poor me survival ego consciousness. But as I said, we just spent 30 days raising our spiritual intentions, and so it's time for us to reprogram how we come at certain things. And the interesting thing about this is Mercury, which is our thoughts or our intellect, and Aries, which is our ego, often work side by side. In fact, in my personal Sensei service, I call Mercury the smartass, and I call Mars the dumbass. And the smartass and the dumbass are the two that are always conspiring to get together. It's always your mind that's going too far that triggers your ego then to go too far. And then your ego goes too far, and then your mind feels bad about it, and just back and forth, back and forth. So I think that this is a profound rewriting of our ego-mind consciousness, and I think it's a blessing in disguise. But here's the thing. Ego is all about survival. So when you tell the dumbass that it needs to change, it usually resists. That's what it does. It usually fights. So this is the one state of awareness that's the most difficult out of all the 12 states for us to change, because it's designed to fight and not change. So it takes really a master to learn how to surrender the ego, to learn how to shift your states of awareness and give dominant to the proper states of awareness, which would be your feelings and your heart. Now, what's interesting about this is that Mercury is going to be moving backwards, okay, as the sun moves forward. So it's kind of interesting. The sun will move from step 5 to step 24 during the retrograde. That means our heart will be continuing to grow forward. Sun never retrogrades, ever. That's because the earth doesn't retrograde. And so we move forward from basically beginner, and it starts at step 5, which means what our ego thinks. Amazing. And then it ends at step 24 when Mercury goes direct, which is us accepting and receiving our ego. Terrific. Amazing. I mean, the steps always just lock in. And as the sun is moving forward, Mercury is moving backwards, which means we are decommissioning as we construct. And there comes a point when the sun and Mercury actually cross, I call this the scissor effect, okay? And ironically, this scissor effect will happen on April Fool's Day. So it's like on April Fool's Day is the day when we get it. It's kind of ironic and paradoxical, but I love it. And it happens at step 11, the step of integrity. Is that not amazing? So the ego and mind will come together on April Fool's Day. And the reason why I want to tell you that is you're probably not going to be clear on the new behavior or the new ego until April Fool's Day. And even once you're clear, you'll realize you have still several things to clear out, several things to understand. So I want to walk through what this rethinking retrograde means for each of the 12 signs. And in each of these cases, I'm going to tell you what the heart is building with the sun, and I'm going to tell you what the Mercury retrograde is deconstructing at the same time. All right, so I'm going to basically explain the scissor effect that is happening for all 12 signs. And as always, I recommend that you listen to your sun sign and your rising sign, which for my subscribers is your A story and your B story. And as always, I will put a graphic up here on the side in case you want to fast forward to your friends and family or one of your own. Aries. Aries, the purebreds of the zodiac. Happy birthday, Aries, by the way. Aries is going to be their heart is going to be reconstructing their defenses all the way up to their actual character. So Arieses are getting a makeover, literally. You might see Aries change their wardrobe, their hairstyle, the whole 9 yards. They're going to rebuild defenses all the way to character. And as they're rebuilding their defenses to character, the Mercury retrograde is having them rethink all of their behavior. And by the time Mercury hits step 4, they will have a new defensive posture. All right? Now, by defensive posture, I mean your initial way of approaching your defenses. So a lot of Arieses approach their defenses defensive. Okay, like they approach being defensive from the beginning, or they approach being offensive from the beginning. Depends on the spiritual age of the Aries. So whatever your approach has been, Aries, in other words, to assume guilty before innocence or to assume innocence before guilty, this approach that you have to the world is going to change. It's time to take it up a notch. It's time to take it up a notch that matches and reflects your spiritual faith evolution that you just made in the last 30 days. Taurus! Taurus is going to grow from their fears all the way to their faith. So Tauruses are having a complete reconstruction of their inner spiritual life, basically. Removing fears and discovering a new faith. And by the way, Taurus, this is the last time you have to do this. Yay! I'm so excited. And that's because Uranus has been beating the shit out of us in this particular area. Everyone, basically, has been beaten up. This is the last time. I should say that for all the signs. This is the last time you're going to have to do this much in your lifetime. Sure, every year there'll be a little upgrade, but it won't ever be this intense again. So, Tauruses are rebuilding their inner spirit from fears to faith. And while they do that, they are rewriting their thoughts about what spirituality is, what their spiritual calling is, all the way back to what their karmic posture is. And by karmic posture, I mean when a Taurus shows up to a scene, are they being like an Eeyore, where it's like, oh no, another failure? Or are they showing up going, hey, I'm one of God's chosen? Okay, so I think Tauruses are going to end up rewriting their karmic posture. They're going to redecide what their karma is, basically, as they build a new faith. Geminis! Geminis are doing all this work in their public reputation. So they're going to rebuild where they belong in the world all the way up to their reputation. So the title that they want, the neighborhood they want to be in, how they want to be known, how they want to be treated, etc. And as they're rebuilding their social reputation, they're going to rewrite what their social relationships really are. So maybe they were caretakers, maybe they were aggressors, maybe they were analysts. They're going to rewrite their social relationship all the way back to a new world posture, which means when they show up to the world, they show up with different assumptions and a different intention entirely. So I think we're going to see Geminis do a lot of change. A lot of Geminis probably relocating to new neighborhoods. A lot of Geminis quitting jobs and starting new professions. A lot of Geminis aiming for different things. You might see a Gemini who's an analyst now want to be a writer or want to be an artist or an architect. I mean, complete shifts. Cancers! Cancers are doing a complete rewrite when it comes to their career and legacy. So they're going to, everything from how they make decisions all the way up to what their legacy is going to be on the earth, what they're going to be known for. And what they're going to rewrite with Mercury is their career strategy. In other words, what direction to take, who should they work for, all that sort of that kind of middle ground stuff, all the way back to their career and legacy posture. And a lot of Cancer's career legacy posture has been, I'm here to caretake, I'm here to take care of people. So I think a lot of Cancers are going to decide that they're not here to take care of people. They only want to take care of their friends and family, and they're probably going to change their entire posture of how they work in the world and what their goals are in the world. Leos! Leos are a little bit more subtle. It'd be hard to see for Leos, but Leos are going to rewrite their belief in themselves and carry that all the way up to a new life purpose. So they're going to change what they believe and what they don't believe about themselves, and they're going to change what they believe they're here to do on earth. That's a big change, but it's pretty much internal at first. And what they're going to have to rewrite with Mercury is they're going to have to rewrite what their actual knowledge is. They're going to have to get their mind around what they really know and don't know, okay, instead of assuming and things like that. And this is going to go all the way back to changing their core belief posture. So Leos might have had a core belief that they deserve for no reason. Leos might have had a core belief that they're meant to be stars. They might have had a core belief that they're born with a silver spoon in their mouth. I know I'm being negative, but I'm thinking that it's going to go from negative to positive, right? Whatever that core belief is, it's going to change, and that's going to change their whole life destiny and life purpose. Virgos! Virgos are going to rebuild self-trust all the way up to transformation. So how they trust themselves, why they trust themselves, all the way up to actually making changes in their life that they can trust. And while they're making these changes, they are rethinking where the boundaries are, where the lines are with this person, that person, money, job, people, everything. They're going to rewrite all the boundaries all the way back to a different self-trust posture. So Virgos, I think, have mostly had a lack of self-trust as their posture. They've pretty much not trusted. Even when it's proven, they didn't trust it. So I think Virgos are going to change and actually trust themselves at the core, and that's going to be the Mercury Step 4 rewrite. Libras are having a big one. They're rewriting their relationship to themselves, mirage, all the way up to self-mastery. So from mirage to self-mastery will be rewritten. The retrograde means that they will rewrite all of their vows to other people. Every relationship a Libra is in will probably change. They may not tell the person, okay, like that might come next month, but they basically are going to change what the rules are in all their relationships. And this is going to go all the way back to a new mirage posture. Now, most Libras that I know, their mirage posture is you before me. So they always put other people before themselves. Some Libras are the opposite, that they were selfish and they didn't consider others. But I think that core posture of how they approach themselves in the mirror and the assumptions they make about themselves in the mirror is going to change. Scorpios are going to go through a complete lifestyle rewrite, from their health and how it is to live in their body all the way up to their lifestyle. Now, lifestyle includes where you work, how you work, who you work with, your work environment, your home environment, your sleep environment, the whole basically reality. So Scorpios are getting a reality makeover. And while they're doing that, they're going to rethink how routine works in the day. They're going to rethink about how they work, how they spend their hours, who gets their time, who doesn't get their time. And this is going to go all the way back to a new health posture. And I think most Scorpios have come from the posture of a stressful life, a life where there's no time, a life where there's no time for them. And I think this posture of assuming life is always like that, behind or stressful or hard, that posture is going to change the way they think about that. Sagittariuses are going to rewrite their self-love all the way up to personal dreams. So they're getting a complete heartfelt makeover, okay? Now, in the Mercury retrograde, this means they're going to rethink their creativity. They're going to rethink the way they are creative. They're going to rethink what they're creative about. They're going to rethink romance. They're going to rethink love. They're going to rethink children. They're going to rethink everything that comes out of the heart, basically. Think about it from a new perspective. And that's going to go all the way back to a new self-love posture. And I believe most Sagittariuses have been very loving to others, but have not really loved themselves at the end of the day. They say they do, but if you check to see if they turned in their homework, they didn't. They skipped out. Okay, so I think Sagittarius will have a new self-love posture, and for most Sagittarius, it will be that they actually do love themselves for once. Capricorns are going to rewrite everything from self-compassion all the way up to a new emotional foundation. So their entire emotional stability is going to be rewritten, okay? And their mind will be thinking about what their home is like, what their nurturing is like, how soft are their pillows, how soft is their bed, how soft are their parents, like basically how nurturing is life all the way back to a new self-compassionate posture. And I think that Capricorns mostly had a zero self-compassionate posture. They work themselves to the bone. They expect too much out of themselves. They never let themselves off the hook because they're so goal-oriented, all right? So I think for many Capricorns, this will be the first time where self-compassion is part of their posture. Aquarius are making all their changes in the mental realm. That's where they are very egotistical. They're very self-centered and egotistical in the way they think, if you don't know. Very, very cool on the outside, very, very self-centered in the mind. And what they're going to do is rewrite the way they think from basic thoughts all the way to their attitude or master plan. So they're going to rethink the entire intellectual scope, all right? And in the actual thinking part of it, the Mercury part of it, this means they're going to change their logic, they're going to change their priorities, they're going to change what they include in their thoughts and what they disclude in their thoughts. So it'll still be them first, which is good because they're humanitarians. They should think for them first, but they're going to include new logic, a new mental picture, basically. And this is going to all go back to a new mental posture, okay? So this means a mental premise. Aquariuses might have had the mental premise of they're here to save the world. And their new premise might be, I got to save myself first, then save the world. So I think you're going to see Aquariuses changing their mind. Don't be surprised if an Aquarius suddenly comes to you and says, I'm moving to Europe and doing this and doing that. And you're like, what? Where'd that come from? Well, because they hold so hard onto their thoughts with Aries, when they change, it's usually profound. It's usually big. It's kind of like there's a lot of pressure that's built up from not changing. So when you do, you have a big response. And that's true with all the signs, by the way. But I think you'll see some profound change in the Aquariuses. Pisces, they're going to rethink self-confidence all the way up to what gives them abundance. So Pisces are completely rebuilding their value system. That's how they make money, how are they productive, what they value in themselves, the whole 9 yards. And Mercury is going to be focusing on actual productivity. How much do you get done? How much do you not get done? How do you go about baking those cakes? How do you go about building those dressers or whatever? And this is going to go all the way back basically to a new self-worth posture. So I think a lot of Pisces, their self-worth posture is that they owe the world. They feel guilty. They should have done better. And so I think what's going to change is Pisces are going to say, you know what? I don't owe the world anything. I've paid my dues. I've done enough. I think that their self-esteem posture is going to be what changes the most. And I think Pisces are like Aquariuses. We're going to see some big changes with Pisces. Kiss your local Pisces because that fish might be in a new fishbowl here in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So that basically tells you what to expect in the Mercury retrograde. And the one thing I want to underscore is don't be impatient. With Mars in Capricorn and the Sun in Aries, you're going to expect things to happen faster than they really can. It's going to take 3 solid weeks for you to completely rebuild this ego. And then after that, you still have to go out and try those new shoes on. So there'll be a testing phase after. Be compassionate, be non-judgmental, give yourself the space and time that you need. All right, couple of announcements. For one, Serious Joy, my personal Sensei service. If you're not a member, this is the best time to join. That's because in the next 3 weeks, I'm going to be giving extra guidance for the Mercury retrograde. And when I say extra guidance, I mean day by day in my daily pep talk, I'll be talking about what step number Mercury is at and what you have to focus on just that day, which is a huge blessing because the mind tends to want to do everything at once. The mind tends to want to add everything on our plate. And I'm going to focus it down for just what you have to do each day of the Mercury retrograde. If you'd like to try out my service, it's only $3.99 for the first 30 days. Give it a try. Come to SeriousJoy.com. Then lastly, a humble invitation to join our Lightwork group on the internet. If you're a light walker, if you live in your heart, you might want to rub elbows with other people just like yourself. We're hard to find, right? That's why I created the NamasteToday.club. This is a club of enlightened individuals who are sharing their businesses, sharing their vision, sharing their talent, many people giving out free readings, all sorts of great stuff. You're welcome to join. Come on down to NamasteToday.club. All right, my friend, good luck in this week. It looks like it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but by the next week, we'll be on to the real good stuff. While you're out there, remember that I love you and to live, love, be.
It's serious joy, joy, joy.